So many people want to say I lost my vision, and I tell people all the time I lost my eyesight. I personally feel like I gained vision.
Someone cares about you.
There's a reason why your heart is beating.
You still have a purpose.
Don't give up.
It's important to know that you're not alone.
You're not alone.
You're not alone.
You are not alone.
Walking even for just 20 minutes can be enough to change the entire direction of your day. And yet it's something that we always put off for another time. So I want to challenge you now. If you have the means, get outdoors and get moving. Do it as you listen to this next interview with Lonnie Bedwell. Lonnie is a former Navy Petty Officer Submariner turned extreme sports athlete. And after leaving the military, Lonnie was shot during a hunting trip with a great friend and former corpsman that caused him to become blind. But that's not stopped him from choosing to live life fully while also being a single dad to 3 daughters. In 2015, Lonnie became a National Geographic Adventurer of the Year, and his achievements include the first blind descent of the Colorado River through the Grand Canyon and the first blind veteran to summit Mount Everest. Lonnie, welcome to the 1 Mile, 1 Veteran podcast.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, as our listeners head out the door with their Strava app tracking their progress, I want to jump right in. Your military journey from Navy Petty Officer to renowned extreme sports athlete is quite remarkable. How do you think your military background, as well as just your background of growing up around family, contribute to your resilience and determination in pursuing such challenging adventures?
Well, it's my military background that got me into it to begin with. You know, when I finally went to a VA blind rehab center up in Chicago, they knew a little bit of the backstory I had done for the last 14 years being blind. And they asked me, they said, we know blind people snow ski, but we've never done it here as a recreational outing. And we'd like to find something for these younger veterans to do. Will you be our guinea pig? I said, twist my arm. If they can do it, we can do it. But then I also think that the time on the submarine, you're doing all these missions and drills, and a lot of times we killed the lights. You know, intentionally the lights would go out on the submarine, and you just have to navigate and do what your job was to restore the engine room and restore the submarine to full use. And I think that helped prepare me for doing things blind. I wasn't aware of it at the time, but reflecting, I think it really did.
Yeah, those egress drills, I can imagine, were a little bit of a taste of what was to come later on in your life. But you also have some really funny stories because you did serve 10 years as a submariner, and you got into some shenanigans while you were on the sub as well. That could have ended up quite differently too. Would you mind talking a little bit about your career and where it took you?
My career, like I joined as a nuclear power machinist mate, went through nuclear power school in Orlando, then a couple of years out in Idaho, before landing on the submarine in Norfolk, the USS Oklahoma City, SSN 723 fast attack submarine. And during the time I was on the boat, we ended up getting involved, the nation did, involved with Operation Desert Shield and Operation Desert Storm. So we were engaged in that a little bit. On submarine and through all those efforts, doing little drills, chasing Ivan, if you will, around the oceans and tracking them and different other submarines and working with the battle groups. You know, it was kind of adventures. And then, occasionally there'd be some special forces people appear on the boat, and then they'd just kind of disappear off the boat wherever we took them to. And some people, intel people would come on the boat for a while, and we'd just be stationed, and they'd do their thing, and we'd just deliver them off again somewhere else. So, it was very intriguing time especially I think during that time frame for me and everything that we did.
Absolutely. Well, I know that after you got out, you made the decision to kind of devote your time and your energies to your family. Like a lot of people at around that 10-year mark, we were at a crossroads, right? And yours took you back home, small town living, and starting to really raise a family where you grew up, the hunting and fishing lifestyle. But in 1997, a hunting accident kind of started to change the trajectory of your life because it took your sight. Would you mind sharing with our listeners the immediate impact that this event had on you and how you went about navigating the physical and emotional challenges of adapting to a life without sight?
Yeah, that was, and I love your choice of words, life without sight, because so many people want to say I lost my vision. And I tell people all the time, I lost my eyesight. I personally feel like I gained vision. But that accident actually happened 3 years to the day that I got off of active duty, and I had joined the Naval Reserve, then rolled over into the Army National Guard, and was still in the Guards when that happened. But 3 years to the day, May the 4th of 97. Initially, it was hard. I had severe headaches, the pain, the drama. I literally went from 180 pounds to 129 pounds, drinking Ensure shakes like they were candy, losing weight and trying to regain my strength. And I finally did get enough strength to get up. And it's literally in the house I'm sitting in right now, in the living room in there. Something really happened. Approximately 2 months after I lost my eyesight, I was lying on my couch, just fighting back these tears, thinking about my 3 beautiful daughters, and wondering what they thought of me, how I'd be daddy, how I was just going to do anything. I was struggling emotionally of this world. I was the first blind person that I'd ever met, other than someone that was very well on in their years due to, glaucoma or something like that. And I had no mobility training at the time, but I remember, my foot tapping the floor. It's like, okay, Lonnie, you finally got enough strength to get up. So I went to my closet and I took the handle out of the broom and I went out my back door and I started moving that broom similar to the way I'd move a cane now. And just started going across the yard and was lost a couple of steps into the yard. But to make a long story short, I ended up going down the edge of my field and found my little barn, just lowered my head, and because my barn was surrounded by chest-high weeds and I couldn't get into it without getting into those weeds. And I ran into my youngest daughter, and she, after asking me what was wrong and stuff, she volunteered to help me go get on the lawnmower and get it out there so I could mow around that barn. And so she helped me get it out to the riding lawnmower out to the barn. I had her stand back up the house and watch, and I ended up mowing 3 laps around that barn. And shut the lawnmower off, and I could hear her just jumping up and down, squealing. She's yelling, "You did it, Daddy! You did it! I knew you could do it! I knew you could do it!" And I picked her up and I give her a big hug, and instead of fighting back tears, I had tears of hope just flowing off my face. And those girls of mine, they let me know that I was still Daddy, which was immensely huge in my life, and that I had value. I still had purpose. And that's one thing a lot of folks, I hope they really take back is, we might be a little different. Things might be a little different. Our lives are challenging, but we still are needed. We still are wanted. We still have value. We still have purpose. And we still have this amazing life that we can live.
That's absolutely incredible. And I love that it was your 5-year-old daughter at the time that was the only person kind of around to supervise this, because, when your father came around later on that day, at least in your book, you talk about, everything from the accident in detail, and I'll save our listeners the gruesome details of it. It's an absolutely amazing story of your desire to survive and making it happen, because against all odds, you shouldn't have been able to, 1, survive the accident, but then 2, within 2 months, drive a riding mower around a barn, cutting down weeds, and everybody outside would have said, "No, we've got this, Lonnie. You've done so much. Continue to focus on recovering. Rest up. It's only been 2 months. There's no adaptive. Your home hasn't been adapted for your new living conditions." And here's this 5-year-old daughter going, "You got it. You can do whatever you want to do, Dad. And I'm here to encourage you." I absolutely love that. And that was just the first step forward. Because 4 years later, you talk about the impact that your accident had on your second wife, that eventually led to her leaving, which then made you a single dad to teenage daughters, and you had to teach them how to live life, how to navigate life as a teenager, which included teaching them to drive, but you also taught them to hunt and fish. Those are some extraordinary feats. How did you go about approaching parenting, especially as a single parent?
It's like you said, you reiterated, well, all these adults were saying, no, 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 no. I'll do that for you. I don't want you getting hurt worse. I don't want you this. My daughters were saying, go, go, go. They were the ones that really drove all that. And then finally, the adults were realizing these girls don't necessarily have a clue. And so we better jump on board. So they did. And then something else I'd like to address that you brought up is just like my separation there. These accidents or whatever the situation, it doesn't just happen to the person involved. Loss of my eyesight impacted everyone around me, and I wasn't smart enough at the time to realize how much it truly did impact everyone else around me. So while everyone was so focused on me, there was other people in the background screaming for help as well, and they needed help as well. So that's why I really encourage, it's just, not only the person involved, which it is traumatic, but everyone needs help. And there's nothing wrong or weak about reaching out and say, hey, you guys might have been there. You might have this experience. Or you might help me, help us. And by me not going to a blind rehab center, for example, for 14 years, could have been a huge mistake because I learned so much when I went. If I'd have went so much earlier, it might have made such a difference. And so I don't look back on it now and begrudge things because life changed for them as well. And if I got to help, but kind of coming back around to raising the girls blind, it's kind of funny. It's got its challenge. Because, you want to see to do things differently, but yet in a lot of ways, I think it was more rewarding to my daughters because they were having to kind of learn to adapt and do things differently. But they were just like every other kid. They would get by with anything they could get by with, not just because I was blind, because I was dad and they were teenagers or they were kids and they wanted to do their thing. And I distinctly remember making them mad one time here in the house, and they all three, since I made them mad, they decided to rearrange the furniture on me. And I went walking through the house, and they put an end table right where an end table never was before. And I flipped end over that end table. I could hear them in the other room just chuckling, laughing, And once I realized I was okay, I chuckled too, but I had to discipline them because I really could have got hurt, And so they all laughed after that. They said, we'll never do that again. But it's a standing joke now. It's, like I said, they're teenagers and sneak around. But you just adapt. But that's what life is. With all of us, we all have to focus on the gifts we have, not dwell on the things we lost or never did have. And that's why I tell my daughters all the time, we all have this special, unique set of gifts that no one else has. And that's what makes us all so important. And my daughters helped me with that as well, So it was kind of fun at times trying to figure out, okay, how can we get Dad back involved to being a coach on our softball team, which I did. I started teaching their softball teams again, and I'd do the fielding practice, and just learn how to drive and just learn how to do the things I always used to do a little differently, but yeah, I think it was rewarding in so many ways.
That's absolutely incredible, and I know that they got that practical joke sense of humor from you with some of the stories that you tell, and I hope you do share some of them as we get a little bit deeper into the conversation. But as a predecessor to going to the blind rehab center, you ended up having several different jobs. And one of the most remarkable ones that you had worked was in construction. Primarily, it seems like you really liked being up on roofs. So adventure was just kind of part of your life. A blind man on a roof. Why choose something like that? Because, just being up on heights freaks me out. And here you are taking spills sometimes.
Yeah. Oh, but that's kind of the funny thing. When I do get on the roof, they put me on the edge of the roof. after a while. I mean, because it's like, well, he can't tell how far off the ground he is. It's not going to make him nervous, So they'd love to get me right over on the edge, so they didn't have to be. And yeah, and we'd get on there. But it was kind of funny how it all started. Because I was, like I said, my daughters, I just got a hammer and nail and started teaching me, said, here, trying to learn how to drive a nail. And every time I swung a hammer, I hit a nail, but most of the time it was these and it hurt. But I finally got the rhythm. I finally got it to where I was doing it. And, my daughters called the hammer, they called it a banger. So once I really started pounding, hey, that's a good banger there. But so I got permission to tear down a couple of houses here around me that the coal mine owned. And when my daughters would go to school, I'd literally walk out the door, down the road, into the house, and get up onto the roof and just start tearing them down piece by piece. And then I ended up here at home one time. It's in 2004. And I was sitting here talking to my aunt, and she was having a house built. And I told her, I said, man, I wish that I could help. I said, I know I can do some of that stuff if they just let me help them. And unbeknownst to me, she told them about me, that I was blind. And I didn't find this out until like 2015. When she told them about me, she said, I want you guys to give him 2 weeks to come over here and help you guys build my home. Let him help build my home. And if it works out, great. He can stay here the whole time until my house is done. And if it doesn't, he'll understand and I'll understand. They turned her down. And she told them, she said, you guys don't understand. You will give him that 2-week opportunity, or I am going to fire you and find someone else to finish building my home. And so they're like, all right. Well, I ended up working with those guys for 14 years and building numerous houses and stuff like that. And I'll never forget the very first week I was there with them guys, I started helping them put up drywall, and they'd give me a measurement to cut drywall. And I cut a piece of drywall and I helped throw it up on the ceiling. I asked the guy I was holding up there with, I said, how'd the cut look? And he's like, well, it looks like a blind guy cut it. Then he was just stumbling all over himself like, oh, no, I'm sorry. And I was just laughing, and he's like, man, I'm so glad you're laughing, because I felt like horrible. And then, like I said, I get asked so many times by people who see me on a roof for the first time, Lonnie, what are you doing on a roof? My standard answer is, I'm on a roof. Help! How'd I get up here? And then I got in, also was doing all the wiring for these guys. And I was working on this one house. This, about 1,200 square foot home. And I had been there from the ground up, helping on this house. And the homeowner would come around at least once a week. And I was in the final stages we were in the final stages of this house, and I was putting the ceiling fan up. And the homeowner was standing there talking to the contractors, the owners of the company. And I asked them, I said, hey guys, can you look up here and tell me what color these wires are? Which ones are black and which ones are white and red. And the homeowner's like, what do you mean? What color are those wires? And I'm like, I can't see them. He's like, oh, bull roar. And my boss said, he's telling you the truth. He said he can't see them. He's blind. And he called him into the other room, like, he wired my house and he's blind. But what got me with that, I had been there, like I said, he had seen me for 4 months, once a week for 4 months, and did not have a clue that I could not see. so made me feel pretty good. But he'd see me around town after that for the next 10 years. He's unfortunately passed on now. And it'd be like, hadn't burned down yet.
Hey, Lonnie, I love your positivity and the work ethic of just not letting anything hold you back, even a sightless world. What eventually led you to then go seek services with the VA, as you had mentioned earlier, and their Blind Rehabilitation Center? Because you were doing so much already. I mean, you taught your daughters how to drive on your own property. And, I think that like driving as a blind person would probably be the epitome of what you're capable of doing.
I didn't say we did good, but we did it. That driving, like I said, it did start behind the house. And I'd literally, old Ford F-150 four-wheel drive, I'd put it in four-wheel drive on the low side so I couldn't get going too fast. And I'd roll the window down and listen to the sound of the weeds and the roar of the motor, put one of them on my lap and let them steer. And I'd shift the gears. And as time went on, they got better. They'd do more and more. And when they got good enough, we literally took off down the county road. And then they let me drive a couple of times after that. And, stop, because I couldn't judge distance. But what got me there to the VA was my youngest daughter finally graduating high school. I knew that I was going to have to get a little bit more independent myself with technology, and I'm trying to, scan papers so I can read my own mail and get these label scanners so I could tell what was in a can. Like you can scan a barcode and it'll not only tell you the ingredients, but it'll tell you step by step of how to prepare it. So I wanted that kind of stuff just to kind of bring me into this technology world. And I didn't have a cell phone before that, and the cell phones are just amazing. What a game changer. So I wanted to go up there and get that stuff and get that kind of independence that they helped me with. And that's why I went finally, and voila, yeah.
That's incredible. And how did you go from pursuing technology to then pursuing things like kayaking and mountaineering and this adventure sports?
Well, it's like I said, when I went up there finally, they knew this backstory, me building these houses and, getting a chainsaw again, which my dad had taken all my chainsaws away from me, and I went and bought one, and my mom helped me took me to use one the first time. But so I used chainsaw, and I'm out there all the time cutting firewood and stuff and mowing, push mowing. So they knew this backstory, and that's why they asked me. They said, Lonnie, we know that these people do it. And while I was up there was these 4 guys who lost their eyesight as a result of combat. So after I went up there and did the snow skiing thing, one of these gentlemen, the first 4 that I met up there, Murph is his name, he was invited by the Wounded Warrior Project to go water skiing, cycling, and sailing just a few months later. And I'm not eligible for the Wounded Warrior Project, but he told him, he said, you bring Lonnie, I'll go. But if he doesn't go, I'm not going to go. Well, they called me up and they said, Lonnie, will you please call his family and ask them if they'll go? So I did, and his wife didn't want to go. And she said, Lonnie, he doesn't want to go without you. So long story short, Murph once again said, hey, if you don't bring him, I'm not coming. So they called me up and asked me to go as a special guest. And so I went water skiing for the first time without eyesight, and sailing and cycling. And then between the snow skiing event and that event there, I started getting invited to go to a lot of these other organizations because they knew I would try. To me, this became my next duty assignment, my next mission. When I was looking at these folks thinking, okay, they don't think they can do anything, but yet I know they can. So it was just that, and I'll not forget Murph getting up on skis and having fun and doing that. And like I said, from there, it just kind of blew up. And I didn't do most of these adaptive sports. I never snow skied. I didn't kayak. I didn't mountaineer. I didn't rock climb. None of this stuff when I had eyesight. I did a little bit of riding a bicycle, and I did a little water skiing, but that's it. None of the other stuff I didn't do. And so then I was asked to go to the Disabled American Veterans Winter Sports Clinic out in Snowmass, Colorado. And I think that was in 2011, 2012. I'll get the years mixed up, but I went to that. And while I was out there, that's where I was introduced to rock climbing on the fake wall and a little bit of mountaineering, hiking upside the mountain. And I was introduced to kayaking in a swimming pool by an organization called Team River Runner. Me and a friend of mine, we thought, well, let's just go check this out. And when we got down there, they told us, they said, you guys can win a free T-shirt if the first time you're in a pool in these kayaks, if you can do an Eskimo roll or a combat roll, which is when you flip upside down the kayak, you use your paddle and hip snap to flip yourself back upright. So I won a T-shirt.
Nice.
I was able to do a roll the first time in the pool, and then they invited me to go to a clinic called what they called the out of sight clinic up in Montana, around Immigrant, Montana, or on the Yellowstone River, just outside the park. And that's where I was introduced to my first whitewater. And after that clinic, Joe Mornini, who's the executive director, was sitting at the airport, and he said, Lonnie, he said, how would you like to be the first blind veteran to kayak the Colorado River through the Grand Canyon? And I was like, whoa. I thought, what a vision. And to me, it gave me a dream. And little did we know, it'd be the next year with 14 days of whitewater experience under my belt and over 1,500 of those combat rolls in my pond here at the house that we go run the Grand Canyon the first time.
That's absolutely incredible. That's a 0 to 60, 0 to 100 story right there for any able-bodied, able-visioned individual. But I'm imagining, there's got to be some challenges of doing one of the most treacherous whitewater experiences available on North America. How did you, what were some of those that you faced, and how did it influence any of your subsequent pursuits?
Oh, yeah, it was just kind of huge. It's crazy. That trip, I'll not forget, Joe was supposed to guide me. But in working up and exercising to get prepared to guide me down the river, he ended up finding out that he had heart conditions and ended up in the hospital having open heart surgery. So he couldn't guide me. So he got a hold of a couple of these other disabled vets, younger veterans, and asked them to guide me, outstanding kayakers. But, when we went out there, and I'm just kind of not answering your story or your question directly, but yet I think it's kind of cool that my parents asked me before we ever went out there, they said, Lonnie, of all the stuff you've been doing, why do you have to do this? Why? And I told them, I'm going to be guided and surrounded by all these other, I think there are 15 other disabled, combat injured veterans. And I said, they give me everything they had, not just our country, but me. They give me their best, and they deserve my best. And every paddle stroke I make is an effort to pay them back somewhat for what they give to me. Never can I pay them back. Never can I pay you guys back for what you've done. Never can I. But it just pushed me that hard to do that. And we went to run a lot of these rapids, and I didn't know if I, as soon as I sat on the water, I thought, oh my gosh, this is massive. This is crazy. This is the biggest water I've ever been on, and pushy. And I didn't know if I could roll in it. And one of the guys told me, he said, well, intentionally flip. And I'm like, you're crazy. I'm going to flip enough. And he said, no, intentionally flip and see if you can roll. So we did, and it worked. And we kept going down the river. And, I got offline on one of the, second or third big rapid on the river, got offline and got shoved into this massive hole, just got worked over. But I managed to stay in the kayak and come out of it, and they were yelling. I could hear them yelling down the river at me. I just kept paddling. When I got down to them, they're just cheering. I'm like, okay, maybe we can do this. And then we get to this one of the most challenging rapids on the river called Crystal, and we ran it, and it was crazy. And when we got to the bottom of it, Alex Nielsen was the guy that was put kind of to be my lead. I had 4 primary guys: Alex Nielsen, Mike Bradley, Mike Plord, Chip Sale were my 4 primary leads on that guides in the kayak. And then I do want to mention we had another gentleman, Eric Guzman, who was in a raft, but crucial on giving me mental stuff. And Eric has since passed due to his injuries that he got while he was in. But anyway, as we just finished running Crystal, and Alex pulled me up over to him, and he said, Joe told me when we got to this rapid, under no circumstance am I supposed to let you run this rapid. I said, why did you? He said, because we could. We ended up running every rapid on the river. And I had no preconceived notions of being able to do this either. I mean, I thought I would be bypassing a lot of the rapids. But we ran every rapid. I swam twice, both of them due to my spray skirt imploded, but we actually went through the rapids. And and then when we got to The last day, I'll not forget, the last night on camp, we were sitting there at about 4 miles from the end of the run camp, and everyone congratulated and said, hey, congratulations, you did it. And I said, no, we did it. I can assure you a blind man cannot do a lot of things that we have done. But what can we as people, what can we not do if we'll just simply work together and help each other? And I'll not forget telling them, I said, guys, it's cool to say that we were the first to do this, but it's irrelevant and meaningless unless we pay it forward. So then we woke up the next day and they took a little American flag we had flying off of one of our support rafts. There's a little American flag attached to a piece of PVC pipe. They took it off that raft and stuck the PVC pipe down the back of my PFD. And I paddled the last 4 miles of the Colorado River through the Grand Canyon, surrounded by all these other combat injured veterans, which I'm not one of, but with the American flag flying off my back. And we did it. And one of the most humbling experiences of my life. But it just refueled, like I said, it just fueled in me to just keep doing it, to show what's possible. And, I don't know how many disabled veterans, blind veterans, have been blessed with the opportunity to connect with these organizations, to introduce them to kayaking and to skiing and to climbing. I mean, hundreds. But I got to. It's because of you, because of them, that I have the freedom to live this life. It is the most blessed, humbling life. And I got to do everything I can to pay it forward. And you'll hear me reiterate this like I did earlier in the program, to let people believe in their value, their worth, what they still can do. Sometimes our what we do in our life shifts, but it doesn't diminish our value. Never.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that, Lonnie, and what an incredible and inspiring adventure. And the fact that you made sure it was known that this was a team effort, that you could not have done this alone. This is a group effort. And that's what most of life is. Your life is a perfect illustration of what a community can do when they're working towards a common goal, from building and tearing down houses to raising children as somebody without eyesight, to taking on an extreme sports career. And this wasn't your only time. I mean, you've had other water descents, and then you turn around and you have, if that wasn't enough, you were the first blind veteran to ever ascend Everest. How did the mental and emotional preparation for climbing Everest compare to these other experiences? Because, I mean, me as a hiker, like, I can't imagine trying to prepare for such a feat.
Start is, like I said, I've been introduced to so many of these organizations, and the Adaptive Sports Center out in Crested Butte, Colorado, was working with another nonprofit at the time. They asked myself and another blind veteran, Steve Baskus. They said, guys, we know, we'd like to see if we could start a program to take blind veterans mountaineering. Would you be our guinea pig? Once again, twist my arm. If they can do it, we can do it. And we went out and climbed a 14,000 foot peak out in Colorado called Humboldt, which is when I truly learned to get the proper size shoes to do this, because I ended up losing both big toenails. They've grown back now, but my boots were too small. I realized when you're doing these big hikes, you need a little bit more space in your shoes. So my descent, I lost both big toenails, but they developed a program. And on one of the first climbing events for the program, there was another blind veteran named Aaron Hale who lost his eyesight in Afghanistan due to an IED blast. And him and I decided to go climb Mount Kilimanjaro together, the highest peak in Africa. But literally just within a few weeks of going over there, he developed spinal meningitis due to his injuries. And that spinal meningitis took his hearing, leaving him not only 100% totally blind, but also totally deaf. And I was talking to him at the time. The only way we could communicate with him was to spell letter by letter in his hand or on his body somewhere. And I was on the phone talking to a caregiver who was sitting right beside him in his hospital bed. And I told him, I said, you tell Aaron that I'm not going to climb until he can climb with me. And I heard him repeat every letter. I heard him repeat every word. And then when he realized what I was saying, he yelled at me. He said, Bedwell, you blankety blank blank. He said, no. He said, no, please, please, no, no, no. He said, please climb it for me. Climb it for us. Climb it for all of us. And he wasn't just saying this, he was yelling this at me. And I was in shock, just speechless. But I told him, I said, okay, tell him I'll go. And I knew I had to go do it. So when I went over there to climb, I climbed with people of all walks of life, all different ages, a couple other military veterans, one missing a foot, one with racked up shoulders, a Navy SEAL named Oz, who was climbing on behalf of a fallen comrade. And I told him about my buddy Aaron laying back in his hospital bed. And I told him about one of the other veterans that I'd met that first time up at the Blind Rehab Center in Chicago. And I said, folks, I said, I've got to get to the top of this mountain. I got to pick up 2 little rocks, one for each of those 2 buddies of mine back home, so I can take and melt to them, give it to them. And when I got to the top of the mountain, that Navy SEAL, he told me, he said, Lonnie, I promise you, if I have to carry you, you'll get to the top. But as I stood there, someone said, Lonnie, hold out your hand. And then they put 2 little rocks. And when I got home, I melted to them. And then that buddy Steve, that first climbed out in Humboldt, he asked me a few years after that, it was 2020. He asked me, he said, Lonnie, he said, will you go down South America and climb Mount Aconcagua with me, which is the highest peak in South America? I said, sure, man, I'll be there. I'll join you. And we went down there and we climbed that. When I got to the top, I picked up 2 more little rocks, brought them home, and I melted to them. But while I was on that climb, me and Steve, there was a gentleman named Michael Neal who was climbing as well. He stuck his head in the tent and said, you guys are blind, aren't you? I was like, yeah, we are. Duh. Like, duh, what's the giveaway? But so we just kept chatting off and on. He'd stick his head in the tent and we chatted. Well, fast forward until 2021, 22 timeframe, I was talking to the executive director of the Blind Veterans Association, and he's like, well, Lonnie, next time you do something kind of big or out there, how about joining with the BVA to help bring awareness to the association? I'm like, yeah, sounds good, but I don't know. I have nothing in mind. I don't know what for sure it'll be, but if I do, yeah. Well, 3 days later, I get a phone call from Michael Neal and another guy named Brian Hill. They're sitting at Everest Base Camp. And they said, Lonnie, how about climbing Mount Everest? I just lowered my head because I had no desire, absolutely zero. And I thought, okay, I just get this phone call from the BVA, and I'm talking on this phone call with the BVA, and I get this, and I'm like, okay, we'll do this. And we went to climb Mount Denali together as a precursor to Mount Everest. And never forget, on day 1 going up Mount Denali, I was on a 4-man rope team. I was the 3rd person in line of this 4-man rope team. And the guy behind me, we're going up, and the guy behind me said, hey, Lonnie, take a step or 2 to the right and give this team coming down a little bit of room. When I did, it just broke through under my feet, and I dropped into a crevasse.
Oh, my gosh.
And, the ropes catch me and everything, but I'm kind of here, my chin's on the the snow, my elbows up, and my feet just dangling. And the lead guy it happened to be a Polish team, the lead guy on the Polish team laid on his belly, grabbed my forearms, and he helped pull me up out of there. And when I stood up, and he kept asking me if I was all right, and I'm like, yeah, I'm okay. Finally lifted my glasses to show him I'm blind, and he's like, when the rest of his group found out I was blind, they're like, no good idea, go back. But we ended up going up to the summit, and then I reached down and I got 2 more little rocks. Then we went over to Mount Everest and climbing over there, it's like I said, I had no desire. And we started our ascent on April the 6th, and we didn't reach the summit until May 22nd. due to some of it going up and taking our time going to base camp. Base camp's about 17,000 feet, and then dropping down, doing a couple of acclimation climbs, climbing Mount Lobouchet at 20,000, then up to Camp 3 and the summit. But and then we had a 17-day window there. We just had to sit and waiting on the weather to clear so we could climb. And, I think about that climb too. You see these people, going up the mountain and coming back down, and see the helicopters. A helicopter could land at base camp, and up to Camp 2 they could land. And Camp 2 is at 21,000 feet. They could land and take one person on board and bring them off. If they went above Camp 2 up to Camp 3, they could static line people up just above 23,000 feet. And when you see a helicopter go up to Camp 3, it wasn't good. There's either bringing someone off that didn't make it or severe frostbite. And my people, the guys with me, they tell me, they say, well, that person's upright, so they're alive. Otherwise, if they were hanging by their ankles, they didn't make it. And then this ended up being the deadliest year in the history of Everest climbing season, and the coldest and windiest, they said, in over 30 years. But the whole time, there's so many times, I have to admit, there's times I'd be like, turn around, Lonnie, you don't have to do this. But then the overwhelming thing to me was, no, once again, just like those paddle strokes, too many sacrifices, too many people. I knew it was close to Memorial Day, and all these other disabled veterans and all these people who believe in you and give you this chance and sponsor you and to take people that risk their lives to guide you. And it's just like, take another step, Lonnie, take another step, Lonnie, take another step. And I'll not forget on our summit day, and like I said, you think about that, these people coming down and that turned around because they got frostbite or they're on these helicopters. And, in my mind, I'm sitting there thinking, these people in combat, seeing their fallen buddies, and yet they still go forward for my freedom. I've got to take another step. If they can do that, for damn sure I can do this. And just take another freaking step. And I'll not forget going from Camp 4 to the summit. I'm about halfway up through there, and we're passing people that are struggling, and some of these real experienced people, climbers coming back down that I know, and they're asking me how I'm doing. I'm fine. I ask them if they make it to the top, and they're like, no, I made it to within 500 feet of vertical feet, and my eyelids froze shut, and I turn around and come back, and it's just like, take another step, and I get about probably 750 vertical feet from the top, my oxygen mask starts failing. I mean, once you go above Camp 3, we're wearing supplemental oxygen, a mask with supplemental oxygen. But like I said, I get up to about 750 vertical feet, about 4 hours from the top, my oxygen mask starts failing, not working properly. And I'll not forget when I finally got to the summit, I asked for a spare mask and they didn't have any. And my entire chest was just hurting. But one of the Sherpas took his mask off, gave me his mask, and first time I was able to take a full breath probably in 4 hours. And it was negative 44 degrees, and windy and snowy. And he put my mask on, and he said, I can't get this mask to work either, folks. I'm out of here. And he bailed down the mountain. But it was just, there's so many things that might not have been the smartest thing to go on, but someone was watching out for me, in my opinion, and these people around me were. And I'll not forget too, we turned to come back down the mountain, and some of the porters, they took off with my extra water and snacks ahead of me, and I'm like, where's that? And when one of my guides found out they did, he ran down the mountain to get my spare food and water, and as he waited on me to catch up, which is the worst thing you can do is stand around and wait. He ended up frostbiting 2 of his toes, and he ended up losing part of one of his toes due to frostbite. And I felt bad about that, when he lost it. But, he told me, he said, Lonnie, he said, I'd do it again. We all know what it's like for people to sacrifice for us, and it's amazing. But what bonds you form, like we've talked about already, when we truly do sacrifice for each other, what can't we do, And then I'll not forget, on the way on back down, my second oxygen mask failed just as we was passing the person that ended up not surviving the mountain that day. So, yeah, there was a lot of challenges and a lot of drama on the mountain, and very humbling, very surreal, and I'll never do it again. Never do it again. But I literally, one of my guides, I said, you could give me $1 billion and I wouldn't do it again. And he's like, yeah, right. You don't know what $1 billion are. And I said, dude, what pushed me up that mountain? That mission's done. So if I was to climb it for $1 billion, I'd be climbing it for me, and I wouldn't give me the drive to get up that mountain. I said, what pushed me up? What pushed me up that mountain's done. And needless to say, while I was up there, I reached down, I got 2 more little rocks, and I mailed it to him.
Wow, Lonnie, thank you for just sharing the incredible ascent stories of all those different mountains and the journey that it took to get you up and down Everest, and the sacrifices that went along with that. And the honor that you've brought to your friends, your community, the nonprofits that you work with. You've been sharing your journey for a long time to help inspire and advocate for veterans now. What are a couple of the key messages that you hope that they're taking away from your work?
It's just believe in yourself, believe in each other, your value, your worth, your purpose, your ability, and what we can do. What can we not do? That's my story. That's my story is what can we not do if we'll help each other, and to focus on the gifts that you have, not the things you lost, or not the things that are not truly your gift. There's a statement that says, comparison is the thief of joy. By comparing what we have or don't have, can't do to what others do have or can do, we're robbing ourselves of our own gifts and our own joy. Thankfully, we all have different gifts and we all do different things. People are the ones that put status on all this. What they're doing is more important or more valuable. No. I love to paraphrase the story of John F. Kennedy and NASA. When he was taking some of the big sponsors or donors through the halls of NASA on a tour, and they ran into the janitor. And one of the people in the group asked that janitor, said, sir, what is your job here? And before he could answer, President Kennedy spoke up and said, he's helping put men on the moon. See, President Kennedy realized if it wasn't for that man doing his job, these engineers, these scientists, they wouldn't want to be in that building to do their job. When I think of 2020, the pandemic, prior to the pandemic, who would have ever classified people like Walmart workers as the essential workers? And they were classified that, begged to go to work so the rest of us could get our food and stuff. But 2020 shows us that we're all essential. We all have purpose. We all have value. This is my thing. And the quicker we can find people that fall and whatever, and get them back on their feet, the less that fall can be. And I'm going to add, a couple of little things here I'd like to add, if I may.
Please.
I'm an acronym guy. I always like to say adversity. The way to overcome adversity is to break it down. ADVERSITY. The A and the D is the hardest parts, just like the first paddle stroke through a rapid, the first step up a mountain. It might seem overwhelming, but once you acknowledge and somewhat maybe accept that there's going to be differences and difficulties, no matter how big, no matter how small the adversity is, acknowledge it. Don't compare, just acknowledge it. Then it empowers you to do the VER, visualize every route you can take. And then it gives you the S, what my daughters gave to me, the strength to stand and step to the ITY, into you, your future, the life you can live, the differences you can make. It just starts right there, just acknowledging it and helping. And what goes into a lot of that, I always tell people this too. I call them all emotions, if you will. 3 things I think hold all of us back more than any: foolish pride, fear, and pity. There's nothing wrong with being proud of things you do in your life. But when your pride gets to be so strong that when you run into an obstacle or something happens that you can't humble yourself and ask for a hand up, not a handout, a hand up, that's foolish. Because none of us has ever got to where we're at in life without somebody helping us, teaching us, guiding us along the way. Nobody. And that foolish pride leads into that fear. F-E-A-R, false evidence about reality. Well, if I can't do it by myself, they're going to think I'm not a man. If I can't do it by myself, they're going to think I'm weak. If I ask for help, they're going to make fun of me. If whatever this fear is, that foolish pride kind of leads into that. And then also this fear is, as a blind guy, I can't step outside because I might get bit by a dog, even though you don't know if there's a dog there. I might get hurt if I try this, or you take all the precautions you can. If I know there's a dog out there that bites, I'm not going out there, but to simply not attempt, no, why? And then both of those foolish pride and fear lead to me, the worst one of all is pity, P-I-T-Y, poor information to yourself. Whatever makes you feel so sorry for yourself or for others that it keeps you crippled from moving or from helping them to move. Oh, I am worthless because I'm blind. I'm not a man because I'm blind. There's nothing wrong with having compassion for each other and for yourself, but you can't take it to a level of pity. You just can't. We can't let these three emotions control us. We have to control our mind, and we got to control them to the best we can. And the best way to do that is to help each other to get through this. To ask for those hand up. Hey, bud, I need a hand up right now. Help me. And you're going to find out more people than not. I'm just blown away at the kindness and generosity of the people in this world. And I truly believe there's 2-3% of the people in this world that just absolutely screw it up for the rest of us. Because I think most people just want to be kind and helpful and want a good life and a better life for themselves and for their families.
Oh, Lonnie, man, I normally ask a question for our guests to share a message of hope for those that are struggling with their mental health and suicidal ideations. But you just answered it. I don't need to ask it again. Go back and listen to his message of adversity, fear, and pity. Go back and listen to Lonnie's journey. Go back and read his book. At this time, I'm currently halfway through it, and it is the most inspiring story of community and a man asking for a hand up so that he can move on and continue to live life fully. He's getting busy living, people. So please know this about Lonnie. Lonnie, I know that you had mentioned a little bit earlier in the show that you have a foundation that you're working with back home, but I'd love for our viewers to know kind of what's the next thing you're working on and where can they connect with you?
My next goal at this point, I never had it before though, is to complete climbing the 7 summits and to ski to both poles. I got three, the highest summit in all 7 continents. And then to ski to both poles. It's not been done by a blind person yet. And, like I say, 7 summits, 2 poles, 1 vision. So hopefully we can do it. That's a goal of mine to do. And you can follow along. For people out there that might want to sponsor, they can go to a website called Sightless Summits, SIGHTLESS Summits. And when we actually do one of the summits or ski the poles, you'll be able to GPS track us as we go along and follow that. And then for me personally too, I make posts on a Facebook page. I'm a little remiss. I haven't made one in about a couple of weeks, I think, but I had a few people say, what are you doing? What are you doing? But a Facebook page out there. The Sightless Summits has an Instagram page and a Facebook page, but I personally have a Facebook page. It's under the real Lonnie Bedwell. And then, I have a website, but you can follow there and a lot of these nonprofits. So, but one thing on that real quick on that nonprofit to help get going back home here is called Heroes New Hope Foundation, and where we take disabled veterans and children, hunting and fishing and stuff. And it started because that gentleman I talked about that ended up losing his eyesight and his hearing, he had a cochlear implant on one ear, it didn't take, had one on the other ear. It took a little bit, so we can communicate now. And he simply asked me, he said, Lonnie, I'd like to go hunting again. And I said, well, will turkey hunting do? He's like, yeah, it will. So I worked around the community, and needless to say, there's the four guys that I met at the blind rehab center, three of the four guys I met at the blind rehab center the first time they come down for that very first hunt, and then we formed a foundation after that, but it was what cracks me up is all of them said, now wait a minute, you lost your eyesight in a turkey hunting accident, and you're wanting to bring all of us down here to turkey hunt. Are you just trying to finish us off or what? But it's been pretty cool, and to do that. So, but that's how you can follow me. And one thing I will say too is, I'll give you my email. It's Lonnie LONNIE .r.bedwell BEDWELL @att.net. And if there's anyone out there that wants to reach out, or that I can help, or help point you toward a nonprofit, toward anything, don't ever hesitate to reach out. Believe me, I will respond. Please don't ever hesitate to reach out.
Well, Lonnie, thank you so much for joining us here on the 1 Mile, 1 Veteran podcast. It's been an honor.
Oh, it's my pleasure and my honor. And thank you for the platform, and thank you for what you do. It makes a difference. By you guys doing what you do, giving us the platform, I think we're working together to truly try and make a difference. And thank you.
And to our listeners, please remember that the 1 Mile, 1 Veteran podcast can also be heard on Reese Across America Radio, which is available on iHeartRadio, Odyssey, and the TuneIn app.